Hey, what's up guys, it's TechZoomer talking to you here, and in today's video I want to compare the M2 MacBook Air 15-inch, and I promise this will be my last comparison video, with the 12.9-inch iPad Pro. Because, if you don't know, these two devices cost the same, about the same. The iPad Pro costs around $1,100, the 12.9-inch, while this 15-inch MacBook Air, the base model, starts at $1,299. So I think the differences between these two are about $100, and if you had the Apple Pencil or even the keyboard, the Magic Keyboard, to make the iPad Pro a Mac-like computer, then, of course, it will be way more expensive than the MacBook Air. So, I think it's a pretty fair comparison to make. These two actually share the same market, and so I think it's a cool comparison to make. Should you buy an iPad Pro instead of a 15-inch MacBook Air, or with the same money, should you buy the MacBook Air? And by the title of this video and probably the thumbnail, you already know my answer. So, if you want my full explanation, here's why. But before we do that, don't forget to drop a like down below, subscribe to the channel, roll the intro. So, the 15-inch MacBook Air and the 12.9-inch iPad Pro, they share the same market. They cost about the same. They are treated as computers from Apple, and so I think Apple wants you to decide between these two. But I think it's an obvious choice. Right away, to start this video, don't buy the iPad Pro, just buy the 15-inch MacBook Air. You get a bigger screen, you get a way better keyboard, you get macOS, you get more I/O, more USB-Cs, more performance, more things, more OS support, more apps. Everything is better. The speakers is better, it has a trackpad which is way better. Everything is better. Yes, it's not as light or portable as the iPad Pro, naked, but when you add the Magic Keyboard, this computer, I think it's about the same thickness or even thinner, and I think the weight is about the same. This machine has a 15-inch screen, the iPad Pro has a 12.9-inch screen. Maybe that's the biggest differences between these two devices, is the screen. The iPad Pro with the M2 features 120Hz ProMotion mini LED display, about the same screen present on the MacBook Pros with Apple Silicon, the 14-inch and the 16-inch MacBook Pro. And if you are interested on a comparison between the 15-inch MacBook Air and the 16-inch MacBook Pro, I have a video there. But again, the only advantages that the iPad Pro has is the ProMotion mini LED display and the touch input. This display is the only Apple computer, let's just say, that has a touchscreen. But the thing about the iPads is that they are a touch-friendly environment, and most of its OSs and apps are designed for touch-first interfaces, and not, of course, mouse and keyboard. And so you have about the same apps. You have Final Cut Pro, you have Logic Pro, the same professional apps, and of course Photoshop and other video editing apps and photo editing apps. But at the end of the day, I think that the macOS is much more complete. You have much more support for other workflows and other apps and tools from other developers, not just from Apple, and I think you have a way better experience using the keyboard and the mouse here. This OS, macOS, is much more mouse and keyboard friendly than iPadOS. Apple has had huge trouble optimizing iPadOS to be a more of computer OS and not more like an iPhone OS. So I do believe that the iPad Pro has a tiny advantage over the MacBook Air in terms of the screen, but it's completely consumed and destroyed by the amount of features that this computer has and that one doesn't. And if it costs about the same money, it doesn't make any sense to buy the iPad Pro. For example, the MacBook Air is bigger, yes, but in terms of the design, it's much more like a traditional laptop, while the iPad Pro features the tablet design. This is, I think, a bit thinner if you have the Magic Keyboard on the iPad Pro. This is a bit wider and lengthier. But again, it's a laptop that has a 15-inch screen. What do you want? Then the weight distribution is different. Here, the display is much thinner. Again, if you open this computer, the part where the display is housed, so the display housed, is way thinner and lighter than the part where the rest of the computer and the motherboard is housed, which is the keyboard and the trackpad. While on the iPad Pro is different. If you buy the Magic Keyboard, most of the weight will be stored on the display because iPad has everything under the display. The motherboard, the keyboard, the battery, everything is under this display. And then you have the keyboard part with the trackpad that is much lighter. And Apple needs to balance these on the iPad Pro. And so we end up something with a weight distribution that is not as good as, of course, the MacBook Air. And then, of course, in terms of the design, this is a normal laptop design, this is a tablet-like design, and it's not my favorite. Again, this is a tablet and it's made for tablet apps and it's made for iPad. So iPadOS here is not supposed to be macOS, and this was not built to be more like a Mac. It was built to be like an iPad. And it has advantages and disadvantages. But in terms of the form factor, if you are using a keyboard case and a trackpad with the iPad, then just go and buy the 15-inch MacBook Air. But if you want a form factor to use without any case, that's how the iPad should be used in my opinion, then the iPad Pro makes a case to be bought. So let me know in the question below which is your favorite form factor, the MacBook Air, normal computer design, or the iPad's iPad tablet design. Let me know all of that in the comments below. But again, the I/O here is much better. For the same money, you get one more USB-C port, one headphone jack, and one MagSafe port. While with the iPad Pro, if you buy the Magic Keyboard, you get two USB-Cs, one only for charging on the Magic Keyboard, and one for data transferring speeds. With the M2 iPad Pro, now you get Thunderbolt speeds. But the USB-C port present on the Magic Keyboard case is only USB-C, and you cannot transfer data, just power. So, at the end of the day, the iPad Pro is almost like it only has one port, while the MacBook Pro has two USB-Cs, one MagSafe that saves one port from charging, one USB-C port from charging, and one headphone jack. So, again, for professionals, for someone that wants to use more than one port at the same time when charging, then the MacBook is the obvious choice. This has so many advantages that I can keep going. For example, the speakers. The speakers on the MacBook, I know it sounds crazy, they are better. Yes, the iPad Pro speakers are insane, don't get me wrong. For a tablet, they have a quad speaker system that are really good. But I still think that the MacBook speakers are a tiny bit better. When compared to each other, the differences are not that big, but I do think, at the end of the day, that the MacBook Air speakers are better. But take a listen and let me know in the comments down below. As for the keyboard and mouse, the MacBook Air is much better. It has a full Magic Keyboard, the name that Apple gives to its laptop keyboards. It's great, one of the best keyboards on the market. And of course, has in my opinion, the best trackpad ever made on a laptop, which is the haptic touch trackpad. Has for the Magic Keyboard that you have to buy for, again, $350 or $400, depending on the country, for this iPad to be actually able to compete with this device with gestures and keyboard support then, oh my god, it's so expensive. It puts the iPad Pro on a position that is completely unaffordable, and again, it's not better. It's actually worse than this Magic Keyboard. It's smaller, the trackpad is way smaller, it's not haptic touch, it's a normal trackpad, it's not bad, it's not that great, and so, at the end of the day, if you want a normal laptop experience, I do believe the MacBook Air is much better for that. But if you value the touch input that the iPad Pro actually offers with the Apple Pencil, which is actually very useful for designers and for people that like to draw, then your only choice is the iPad, because the MacBook doesn't feature touchscreens and will never. So, again, in my opinion, I do still prefer the MacBook Air for the same price, but if you really need the Apple Pencil, then the iPad Pro is the computer for you. As for the performance, these machines both feature the M2 chip. This has the M2 non-bin version. The iPad Pro has the M2 non-bin version. But I do believe, and I actually can prove it, that the M2 here is more powerful. These two devices are fanless. So what it means is they don't have fans. They don't have an active cooling system. But the MacBook Air features a more thermally friendly design, while the iPad Pro, being thinner and smaller, can overheat easily. And so Apple turns down the M2 chip on the iPad Pro a bit. So if you compare Geekbench scores, the MacBook Air will feature way better Geekbench scores when compared to the iPad Pro with the M2 chip. For Geekbench 6, the MacBook Air scores 2520 for single and 9655 for multi-core, while the iPad Pro scores 2483 for single-core performance and 9369 for multi-core performance, around 5% less than the MacBook Air. As for sustained performance, this computer is much better, as of course, because it features OS and tools that can take advantage of that. While the iPad Pro, the most professional and power-intensive thing you can do is Final Cut Pro or Logic Pro, and for that, I do believe that the iPad Pro is totally fine. But keep in mind that these professional apps are not the same on the iPad as they are on the Mac. The Mac have more complete and more efficient, in my opinion, programs and tools. The Final Cut Pro is complete on the Mac, while it's still lacking some features on the iPad. So if you take a look at Apple's website and see the features available for the iPad Pro and the iPad OS, if all of those are completely fine for you, then the iPad Pro is still in the choice, any comparison. But if there's something missing on the iPad Pro, I wouldn't wait, just go for the MacBook Air. There's no even discussion. Apple will take years before they make Final Cut Pro complete on iPadOS. So again, it rolls down to the software support and the OS. If the iPad Pro ran macOS, it will be a very, very different story. But iPad Pro runs iPadOS, and so I cannot recommend it for you guys. Finally, we need to talk about the only thing that I think the iPad Pro wins, and it's the display. The MacBook Air features a 15-inch LCD 60Hz display, and this device features 120Hz ProMotion Mini LED display. Yes, the same display present on the MacBook Pros, a Mini LED display. And so this display is much better, has better contrast ratio, has better brightness, it actually has better HDR, and much, much more. This display also can refresh from 10 Hz to 120. It's a Mini LED display, so the same display present on the MacBook Pros. This, in my opinion, is the best display on a portable computer on the market, and the iPad Pro gets it. Although this is a 12.9-inch display, while the MacBook Air has a 15-inch display, a much, much bigger canvas to work on. This is only an LCD display, only has 60 Hz, and it's P3 color gamut capable. The peak brightness here is 500 nits, while the iPad Pro can go up to 1200. So that's something you need to decide. Do you need the touchscreen? Do you need Mini LED? Do you need 120 Hz? If you really care about that, then you can maybe consider the iPad Pro, but still, I don't think it's enough to overpower the other difference in features, like the performance, like the I/O, like the better overall experience using the laptop as a computer, and of course, the biggest one, iPadOS versus macOS. So, still, this is a better display. But I do believe, truly, that you will not care about that. This is still Retina display. It's still really good. The contrast ratio is still really good. You will not notice a difference in a vacuum. So, yeah, for the other features that Apple has on the MacBook Air and macOS and other things that it comes with this laptop for the same price, I don't believe it's worth it going for the iPad Pro 12.9-inch. If you need to buy a laptop like the MacBook Air and you really want a touch-friendly experience, maybe save up, buy a refurbished 12.9-inch iPad Pro with the A12X or the maybe A12Z or even the M1 if you can find it cheap. Or if you want to buy a new, just get the 11-inch, much cheaper for around $900, the base model, and all be fine. But again, we come up to another difference, which is the price ladder. This computer comes with 256 GB of storage, 8 GB of RAM for $1299. The iPad Pro starts at $1199, I think, or $1150, $1149, comes with 128 GB of storage, and I think 6 or 8 GB of RAM. But the RAM on the iPad doesn't make any difference. But if you want more storage, because I think 128 GB is really, really not enough for a computer, then you'll have to pay $200 more to get the 256, and you are over the price of the MacBook Air. If you don't touch the iPad Pro at all, it's cheaper. But the minute that you want to upgrade this iPad Pro with accessories or more storage, you're screwed. The iPad Pro just gets way, way more expensive than the MacBook Air, and it's totally not worth it. So, yeah, be extremely careful with that. Other than that, if you really need the touch-friendly OS and iPadOS and the touch display on the iPad present for your laptop, and you really need Apple Pencil, you really enjoy using a tablet, then, of course, the iPad Pro is for you. But I don't recommend you getting the Magic Keyboard. If you want to get one used, but I don't really enjoy tapping a keyboard on the iPad. Just use the virtual display. I think it's good enough. The trackpad experience on my iPadOS is not that great, so you won't miss anything. And iPadOS has a computer OS. It's not that great. You can make it work. There's a good Files app missing. There's a good Files management system missing. And there's a huge amount of software tools that are not available for iPadOS. So you need to study that if your tools for your work are available on iPadOS or not, and then make your decision. Mine, it's easy. Just go for the MacBook Air. My total recommendation is don't waste your money on a $1,200 iPad Pro that can't do anything. just go for the MacBook Air in my opinion. I totally forgot to mention that the iPad Pro actually features Face ID, while the MacBook Air doesn't. The Face ID on the iPad Pro works on all orientations, so it's even more powerful than the iPhone's Face ID. But let me know in the comments below what you think. While you're there, don't forget to drop a comment below, subscribe to the channel. Thank you guys for watching. This has been Tech Smart talking to you here. Bye bye.